Welcome to Susie Reads, a podcast where I help people master English in a joyful way. Before we get to reading the text, let me take you on a little detour. You know, I like returning to places I've already visited, meeting people I've already met in order to get to know them better, and watching again films I was once fond of. I do the same with books. It's enjoyable to reread them after some time, usually a few years. So I've just finished Eat, Pray, Love for the second time, and I've seen the film twice as well. Why, you may ask, why do I do that? Well, I like depth, and getting to know a place, person, or text well usually takes time. I also want to observe how its meaning and my feeling about them shift over time. And B, my memory for books and films is not that great, so I can still be surprised, you know. As for Eat, Pray, Love, a book I first read 5 years ago, my impression of this book has changed a bit. I remembered it being funny. This time, however, I found it deeper and I focused rather on the light philosophical questions the author raises. By the way, did you know it's her own story? The film with Julia Roberts is nice. However, as it's typically the case, too much gets lost when a novel is made into a film. So, I'd still recommend you both, but start with the book, if it's not too late. The section I chose for this episode is about pleasure. PIACERE. Placer. Why? Because I too feel there is not enough pleasure in our lives. Simple pleasures, I mean, those that cost you nothing and don't lead you astray. Nothing dirty or obscene or eccentric. Those fleeting moments we can pause, breathe in, breathe out, with the awareness of feeling the body, feeling the air, feeling the breath. The moment we sit in the sun and allow ourselves to enjoy its warmth. Or the feeling of cold water on our face. Cutting a fresh loaf of bread, sipping tea and paying full attention to its taste, etc., etc. In short, I'd say it's about being more mindful and thus more present, and as a result, having more enjoyable life. Don't you think so? When it comes to these small pleasures, I immediately imagined the scene from Amélie, the French film from 2001. She's putting her hand in a bag of grains, cracking a crust with a teaspoon and skipping stones at a canal. That's what I mean. But now, let's proceed with the text from the book, shall we? Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing here, I admit it. While I have come to Italy in order to experience pleasure, during the first few weeks I was here, I felt a bit of panic as to how one should do that. Frankly, pure pleasure is not my cultural paradigm. I come from a long line of super conscientious people. My mother's family were Swedish immigrant farmers who look in their photographs like if they'd ever even seen something pleasurable, they might have stomped on it with their hobnail boots. My uncle calls the whole lot of them oxen. My father's side of the family were English Puritans, those great goofy lovers of fun. If I look on my dad's family tree all the way back to the 17th century, I can actually find Puritan relatives with names like diligence and meekness. My own parents have a small farm, and my sister and I grew up working. We were taught to be dependable, responsible, the top of our classes at school, the most organized and efficient babysitters in town, the very miniature models of our hard-working farmer/nurse of a mother, a pair of junior Swiss Army knives, born to multitask. We had a lot of enjoyment in our family, a lot of laughter, but the walls were papered with to-do lists, and I never experienced or witnessed idleness, not once in my whole entire life. Generally speaking, though, Americans have an inability to relax into sheer pleasure. Ours is an entertainment-seeking nation, but not necessarily a pleasure-seeking one. Americans spend billions to keep themselves amused with everything from porn to theme parks to wars, but that's not exactly the same thing as quiet enjoyment, is it? Americans work harder and longer and more stressful hours than anyone in the world today. But as Lucas Spaghetti pointed out, we seem to like it. Alarming statistics back this observation up, showing that many Americans feel more happy and fulfilled in their offices than they do in their own homes. Of course, we all inevitably work too hard. Then we get burned out and have to spend the whole weekend in our pajamas, eating cereal straight out from the box and staring at the TV in a mild coma, which is the opposite of working, yes, but not exactly the same thing as pleasure. Americans don't really know how to do nothing. This is the cause of that great sad American stereotype, the overstressed executive who goes on vacation but who cannot relax. I once asked Luca Spaghetti if Italians on vacation have the same problem. He laughed so hard he almost drove his motorbike into a fountain. "Oh no," he said, "we are the masters of bel far niente." This is a sweet expression. Bel far niente means the beauty of doing nothing. Now listen, Italians have traditionally always been hard workers, especially those long-suffering laborers known as braccianti, so called because they had nothing but the brute strength of their arms, braccia, to help them survive in the world. But even against the backdrop of hard work, bel far niente has always been a cherished Italian ideal. The beauty of doing nothing is the goal of all your work, the final accomplishment for which you're most highly congratulated. The more exquisitely and delightfully you can do nothing, the higher your life's achievement. You don't necessarily need to be rich in order to experience this either. There is another wonderful Italian expression, l'arte d'arrangiarsi, the art of making something out of nothing. The art of turning a few simple ingredients into a feast, or a few gathered friends into a festival. Anyone with a talent for happiness can do this, not only the rich. For me, though, a major obstacle in my pursuit of pleasure was my ingrained sense of Puritan guilt. Do I really deserve this pleasure? This is very American, too. The insecurity about whether we have earned our happiness. Planet advertising in America orbits completely around the need to convince the uncertain consumer that yes, you have actually warranted a special treat. This bud's for you. You deserve a break today because you're worth it. You've come a long way, baby. And the insecure consumer thinks, yeah, thanks, I am gonna buy a 6-pack, damn it. Maybe even 2 6-packs. And then comes the reactionary binge, followed by the remorse. Such advertising campaigns would probably not be as effective in the Italian culture, where people already know that they are entitled to enjoyment in this life. The reply in Italy to "You deserve a break today" would probably be "Yeah, no duh. That's why I'm planning on making a break at noon to go over to your house and sleep with your wife." Which is probably why, when I told my Italian friends that I'd come to the country in order to experience 4 months of pure pleasure, they didn't have any hangs-up about it. "Complimenti, vai avanti." "Congratulations," they would say. "Go ahead. Knock yourself out. Be our guest." Nobody once said, "How completely irresponsible of you," or "What a self-indulgent luxury." But while the Italians have given me full permission to enjoy myself, I still can't quite let go. During my first few weeks in Italy, all my Protestant synapses were zinging in distress, looking for a task. I wanted to take on pleasure like a homework assignment or a giant science fair project. I pondered such questions as, how is pleasure most efficiently maximized? I wondered if maybe I should spend all my time in Italy in the library, doing research on the history of pleasure. Or maybe I should interview Italians who've experienced a lot of pleasure in their lives, asking them what their pleasures feel like, and then writing a report on this topic. Double-spaced and with 1-inch margins, perhaps, to be turned in first thing Monday morning. When I realized that the only question at hand was, how do I define pleasure? And that I was truly in a country where people would permit me to explore that question freely, everything changed. Everything became delicious. All I had to do was ask myself every day for the first time in my life, what would you enjoy doing today, Liz? What would bring you pleasure right now? With nobody else's agenda to consider and no other obligations to worry about, this question finally became distilled and absolutely self-specific. It was interesting for me to discover what I did not want to do in Italy once I'd given myself executive authorization to enjoy my experience there. There's so many manifestations of pleasure in Italy, and I didn't have time to sample them all. You have to kind of declare a pleasure major here, or you'll get overwhelmed. That being the case, I didn't get into fashion, or opera, or cinema, or fancy automobiles, or skiing in the Alps. I didn't even want to look at that much art. I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but I did not visit a single museum during my entire 4 months in Italy. Oh man, it's even worse than that. I have to confess that I did go to one museum, the National Museum of Pasta in Rome. I found that all I really wanted was to eat beautiful food and to speak as much beautiful Italian as possible. That was it. So I declared a double major, really, in speaking and in eating, with a concentration on gelato. So, that's it. The excerpt from chapter 21. Perhaps I should have said at the beginning to those who are unfamiliar with the book or the film that it's Elizabeth Gilbert's personal story. After a crisis and a painful divorce, she, a young American woman, set off on a year-long journey. Italy, India, and Indonesia. The book is divided into 3 sections and 108 chapters, and its symbolism is explained in its introduction. I've marked a few more interesting excerpts in the book, so it's quite possible I'll bring it out one more time on this podcast. And now, back to little pleasures. Do you know yours? Is there space in your life for them, in your day? Maybe this chapter could serve you as inspiration to cultivate them more, huh? Yeah, I know it's too easy to slip back into thinking and trying to be productive all day long. I do that too, but still, it's worth trying. You know, although you won't hear this episode until November, I'm doing all the writing and recording in October. And my recent pleasures, let me reveal that, have been going for walks to the field and picking up autumnal flowers. It wasn't my thing before to have flowers in a vase. I felt they're prettier outside, alive. But now in October, I've done it twice. I very much enjoyed the process of picking them, putting them together, and then feasting my eyes on the bouquet on the kitchen table. But that's not all. The best is to sit there, enjoy the sunshine, potted flowers at the window outside, still blossoming, the ones in the vase, and open my Italian book and read a bit out loud. Just like Elizabeth found reading Italian words from a dictionary in a bathtub very pleasurable, so do I, at a kitchen table. Speaking of languages, the same is true for listening to French. And I have a very yummy example for you. The scene with Emily's pleasures. Find it in the show notes below, please. There you'll also find the link to chapter 21 I've just read. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and will come back soon. Be well and ciao! Ci sentiamo!